what does groundswell mean, right? And I chose this particular word. It's kind of a phenomena which we see today happening in a much more rapid and accelerated fashion, right? Now, there is this book which came out during this social media technologies, that I think propelled a lot of not only social interactions, connectedness, and all of that, but also propelled a lot of business ideas from there. And the examples could be Facebook, Twitters of the world, Instagrams of the world, and that is how this groundswell moment was termed as. But what I see now, since almost a year or so back, with ChatGPT, or rather broadly terming it as a generative AI, as a technology, which appeared to be a social technology platform once again, but very, very rapidly and very quickly, it took over the fancy of everybody. And not only in our personal lives, but also in the professional lives and the careers and the business opportunities we all are chasing, there is a tremendous, tremendous focus on how do we leverage this, and hence this becomes another groundswell moment around it. And that's the topic that I want to relate it with, how GenAI and what is GenAI doing, what kind of things that we need to be prepared for, and related aspects. Yeah. Now, interestingly, right, and in fact, the previous speaker was talking about it, that AI, cannot solve every single thing. And similarly, borrowing that context into GenAI, and you see the two contrasting perspectives, reflected here. The entire board and C-suite and the leadership, right, given the amount of onslaught on GenAI as a topic, and the wild imaginations that it can do everything possible. You can see the left side of the cartoon depicting that. That if you are able to write a poem about your dog, that doesn't mean that you can actually apply it to change the entire enterprise's business functions and the way business works. But that is how the perspectives are. And then on the right, just because it is taking a complex set of information and giving you a summarized view of what it is, means it is comprehensible and you can use it for different kinds of business purposes, right? So these are two contrasting aspects. There's a lot of, I would say, misgivings and misunderstanding about generative AI. In fact, in many of my client conversations and forums where I speak, I always get this question that, so Soum, tell us, how you can marry the predictive capabilities, which has been there for quite some time now, and this generative capabilities coming together to solve very, very complex problems, right? These are the worlds still separated, right? Generative AI probably will take a longer time to get into a predictive way of solving problems, and predictive AI, which has been there for quite some time, will probably take a few more iterations to get into merging with generative AI, so you get a holistic solution and perspective around it. So the camps are divided again, and we will see how the time progresses in that. But one thing for sure that has happened, which is the ability to evolve and experiment faster, much faster than what we have been doing since GenAI or ChatGPT's evolved. Yeah? Now, how do we look into it? It's a very interesting chart that you can see. Technologies like Netflix and the likes, and you can see how many days or months they took to actually capture a wide attention, right? Both from interactions, user experience, usability, and imaginations to do many more new things. Compared to a Netflix, and then where somewhere is Facebook, which took 10 months, you can see a ChatGPT within 5 days was able to grab that kind of attention. And this is why it becomes a groundswell moment, but along with it comes few questions, right? And some of these aspects I will cover through in my talk in the coming minutes. But what is this technology good at, right? And there are many, many misgivings around it. What types of jobs it will affect, and I know for practitioners and many of you in this room, you are still contemplating, you are still scratching your head that how is it going to span out in the next couple of years, and what is the impact of it at a professional front for me, from my skills and my applicability perspective. What activities will deliver the most value for the organization? Still, the camps are divided, and we'll look into a few examples around it. And finally, which is where most of the industry, most of the research and experimentation happening right now as we speak, is how do you safeguard, right? What are the guardrails? And what are the different kinds of frameworks that can be applied so that you are containing it and you are also guiding it and you are informing it. With that kind of a backdrop, right, and I'm going to give you a slightly different perspective around it. And everybody understands what is a hype, and this is our attempt at giving it a slightly more interesting perspective into it. So hype associated with GenAI in the context was around, how do you bring more transformative nature? How do you yield, results from it? How do you make powerful conversations using GenAI and the topics around it? And finally, how do you make it enhanced as a user experience so people will start using it in their daily lives and in their daily jobs or the end user activities? And beginning or towards the November-December timeframe when GenAI came in the first 3-4 months, and if you stretch it in the first 5 months, there was a lot of hype around it, right? Hype in the sense that, this can solve every single problem, this can generate content, and I don't need to really think through. This can actually give me assistance on every single thing that I do today. I can use it to drive certain productivity or certain outputs that I'm not able to do today, right? And with that kind of a wild imagination, between March, April till now, a lot of POCs, right? Proof of concepts and pilots and use cases started emerging. But what happened, a couple of months back? A couple of months back, there was this instance of where, there's a lot of hallucination happening in this. We really don't know how to use this. Yes, it gives me a first draft to do something, but then how do I take it for a industrial use case and a scalability and implementation use cases? How do I productionalize these things? So the world has moved very quickly into the ripe context, right? And that is where a lot of the earlier questions listed comes into picture. Now, ripe is, can you make it repeatable and scalable? And this is where, if some of you who are working in GenAI and the LLMs and then all that thing, you will realize that you just can't predict what the output is going to be, right? And hence, that's the reason why there is a lot of fine-tuning required. There's a lot of guardrail type of things required. And the newest architecture, a reference framework called RAG, has come in so that you gain a better control over it. That what is the output it is giving? Is it predictable, scalable? Can it be integrated, yet isolated? Right? And these are paradoxical in terms. Integrated means, can it be plugged into any of my business applications or processes or workflows, right? Where I, as a human, need a lot of assistance to validate, to understand what this means, and how do I use it, right? So we are working with a company who has got 19 odd plants, right? This machinery plants, and spread across the world. Every time there is a shift change happens, right? This is on the assembly floor. there is a shift change happens. The previous supervisor and the parameters they have set up, a lot of their findings and issues, they actually scribble it around, and that gets passed on to the next batch, right? The next shift that comes out, and they need to follow or they need to make some corrective actions, and it goes on. It works around the clock. And there are several parameters, environmental related, could be machine related, could be people and their efficiency related, could be certain demand supply related parameters coming in to further crank up the production or slow down the production. There are a lot of these external and a widespread information which is not completely text, but a lot of it has to be understood in what context it is written. Now, imagine having a GenAI capability there, which is actually summarizing all of these things and giving you back as a very synthesized information. This is what has happened, what we see you need to do next, and then it continues. And you have to replicate that across 19 plants, very, very different geographical conditions and skills conditions, yeah? So it has to be integrated, but it has to be isolated, because any wrong or any far-fetching imaginatory responses will actually derail the entire assembly process. So that's why that integrated yet isolated aspect comes in. And P is purposeful and practical. I don't have to explain that. From proof of concepts, departmental pilots, this can generate something which is very fancy, to what is really purposeful from a user perspective. That is what it is heading into. And finally, it has to be extensible, right? As you can keep on adding more and more corpus, more and more varieties of data sources and inputs, how better it becomes, right? Of course, for that, you need to do a lot of fine-tuning, a lot of prompt engineering aspects of it, and human in the loop, right? But from the hype, which was so much, now a little bit of a sanity, a little bit of a carefulness, and a implementational perspective is coming in, right? Moving on to, while I'm saying all this, where the investments are going in GenAI, right? And today, many of you in the room, if you are budding entrepreneurs and then you're focusing on creating some app or some kind of an offering that has got a GenAI component in it, trust me, you will attract a lot of interest from the investors community. But where this investment is going, actually, in the beginning, right, it was more about focusing on creating more and more robust LLMs, large language models, right? But like I said in the previous slide, which is the hype to reality, the investment is also getting into the reality mode now. And you can see the bigger block is all about human-machine interfaces, which is human in the loop, become more practical, more purposeful in terms of what problem you're trying to solve. And hence, it is less of a technology focus. It is more of a use case focus and domain focus that is getting into. And AI assistance is another thing that comes together. That's where large majority of the funding is going in. Now, LLM, yes, good. It has got a versatile nature. It has got a little bit of a human, if not equal, but almost there kind of a reasoning abilities. Got various ways of interpretations and then an ability to help and assist us in many tasks. But where the industry is moving in now is domain-specific LLMs, or what we call also the task-oriented LLMs. You will find another terminology called small LLMs, right? As opposed to 12 billion parameters and then can do, in a generic way, solve multitude of problems. Can it be a billion parameters and solve a very specific industry problem? That is where the world is heading into. And you will see a lot more happening in that area as we move forward. This is another interesting aspect of it, a bit of a McKinsey survey, and I felt it relevant to share with all of you, is where enterprises, consulting services company, even product-oriented company or tech companies are moving into, or what the patterns that we see. So, like I said, from hype to ripe, there is a much more renewed focus on what is doable, what use case is relevant. It is not just a departmental POC and a fancy toy that I'm creating, but what kind of a operationalization aspect associated with it, what's the business ROI? These questions are becoming much more prominent now. The second is lots of quick win experimentations, which is primarily happening in the horizontal layer of processes, process optimizations, and those areas. And smaller deal size, right, which is primarily, okay, 40K, 50K, kind of a ticket size, and can you do this quickly, right? And hence, we can do more and more and more, but eventually, many of those things will fall off the floor, right? The last one is, which is where there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of apprehensions happening, yeah? And while Azure and OpenAI is still the market runner in that because they were early, they are figuring out that how do we enable enterprise firewalls around OpenAI so that things don't go out and the enterprises are stuck with their own data and own purposeful innovation using GenAI. Similarly, AWS Bedrock has come out recently taking a lot of small task-specific LLMs, orchestrating it on their platform and providing it as a playground for people to use open source LLMs, which are smaller but very, very focused on solving a particular task in a really good way and develop your GenAI application. So you will find this kind of a monolithic, large, very generative thing and lots of task-specific LLMs coming together. The world is divided into these two, and you will see more and more experimentation in this. But the security aspects and hallucination factors, how effective a prompt engineering can be, what kind of a frameworks that we need to apply to contain the risks around it, that's where a lot of questions are going to pop up as we speak. What we also see, the opportunities in the next 3 to 5 years in a scale of 1 to 5, as you can see. The bottom layer is where the hardware, the infrastructure, chips, right, tuning, and a lot of those aspects is where there was a lot of investment, but going forward, that will stabilize, right? There won't be much more in that because the cost of building, preparing, training, and making the endpoints available for consumption, right, purely from a setup perspective is going to become higher, right? And it is prohibitively costly today, so not many can put money and do that. But there are research happening and initiatives going on. How do you reduce that cost, right? If you recall, a few months back, there was a company called Mosaic, which claimed that they can do the cost of building training LLMs a fraction compared to what the money has been spent till date. And Databricks acquired that company. So we are going to see some interesting aspects on that. But that's not where, going forward, a lot of use cases and investments will happen. Rather, it will be into, as you go up, applications and services and model hubs and ML ops. These are the areas where you will see a lot of focus going to be. So if you are doing GenAI development and applications and use cases, you're in the right space at the right time, right? Moving forward, so many times people ask me that so it is still in a crude way, it is still a machine learning thing, right? It has learned based on certain data, and there are APIs, and people use it, yeah? And why the regular data science kind of activities and project plans and methodologies be applied to this new disruptive technology? Why it is so different? So this is my attempt to simplify it and say that probably they are same, but unlike the the data science or predictive world of doing the experimentations and models. In generative AI, it is completely the opposite side of it. You are actually not defining the what of it, right? In case of a predictive modeling, you define the what of it. In this case, you are not defining the what of it. You are actually following a conversational way of engaging with a model, and it can go from anywhere to anywhere. It follows the speed of thought, if you may. And hence, every time you ask something and you refine, you're looking for a different kind of answer. And you take that answer and you start again further refining, looking for another type of answer. So that it is not, in a way, predictive in that manner. That's why the scope and the model choosing is extremely, extremely important. This is where probably it differs from the regular paradigm of doing data science or engaging with the models. The other aspect that comes in is the prompt engineering and the evaluation part of it, right? And all said and done, even today, for a simple English, you can't just evaluate that it is the right English for the right question that I have asked, because it may represent and present it in many, many different ways for different people, right? It is all how do you take it and how do you make a meaning out of it? That's the reason why the prompt engineering is becoming extremely important, and as a skill, it is emerging as well. Fine-tuning, on the other hand, is about taking your own corpus and also with a RAG kind of a framework, making it much more constrained and narrow and specific to what kind of information you have exposed it to, and hence what kind of information I am looking for from it. Now, in that context, the last one is also extremely important, which is how do you integrate many of these outputs into your applications? In a predictive world, it was easy, right? Because a bunch of parameters, bunch of recommendations coming in, and you can feed into your business applications to take some actions. In this case, it is not a bunch of parameters that is coming out, and hence you really cannot model it to feed into your business applications to trigger the next set of actions, right? This is where the human in the loop, the evaluate mechanism comes in so that you can inform what needs to happen or what you can generate out of it. So that is how the methodologies are slightly different, and we will take some time to really imbibe ourselves and understand how to deal with these things. Just from a perspective of layering, right? The bottom layer is all about the foundational models where a bunch of APIs exposed, and then you just keep querying, and then you get certain things and you start using it. But that's where probably that was the fun around November, December timeframe last year. But now the fun has moved into the second layer, which is take the foundational layers, but then allow it to be using your own corpus, your own specific data sets, right? And focus on narrow yet deep problem solving in that specific area. This is where you will find fine-tunings and embeddings, and then a lot of those technologies that has come up to be used in conjunction. And the holy grail is where everybody wants to get into, is the domain-specific problem solving, right? If you recall, some time back, there was Bloomberg, came out with a LLM, which is all possible financial aspects they have bundled into LLM and trained it specifically on that to solve very financial terminologies and specific occurrences. We are working with a client who is focused on doing deep content generation and generative capabilities on it for pharma and healthcare industry, right? Similarly, you will find more task-specific, domain-oriented applications coming out in the third layer, which is where the industry is maturing into. Yeah? Having all said that, while this is all good news and then interesting aspects of it, what are the key risks around it, right? Now, and we keep hearing, right? Hey, there is a co-pilot. If I want to, and this is our CEO actually posted a couple of days back. He wanted to build a web app for his son, right? To upload a PDF and do something with it. He went into ChatGPT, right, GPT-4, of course, asked this question, hey, I want to build a web app to upload a PDF, and that can do A, B, C, D. Give me a complete code base for this. And it magically produced, right? Now, if you have to really do a project around it, we will need a bunch of web app guys, an architect, a business analyst, and a whole bunch of things come in, take 3 months to build it out and roll it out. Yeah? Now, this code base came in, and then you are actually using that code base to develop something which will be used in a client environment with real users. This is where the intellectual property risks comes in. Whose code is this? Who is the owner of that? Right? How do you certify that it is really, really good? Yeah? Similarly, data privacy and security, what stays in your firewall versus what goes out, because all said and done, it is still a black box, right? You don't really understand a whole lot of things inside it, what it does and what it doesn't do. Trust, identity, a lot of these questions are actually out in the open, and a lot more debate is going on. So going forward, with LLM and the kind of applications that I was talking about, the focus will be much more around how do I bring in an environment and ecosystem where these things are getting addressed, right? And this is some of those aspects of the key concerns that needs to be addressed. You can see RAG, fine-tuning, these are the terms that has come out. Evals and guardrails are coming up as we speak about it, more framework, more research happening in this area. Defensive UX. This is another very, very critical component that is taking popularity now. A lot of early research, a lot of early brainstorming happening, which means that as people interact and engage with GenAI applications, what is the frontline defense that one needs to put in? Because mind you, even though you have done the prompt engineering and the constraints around it in a much, much better way, a wrong prompt can actually do a whole lot of havoc in the implementation side. So how do you take care of those things in the defensive UX side of it, right? So this is where a lot of current research is focused on, investments are going in this area. Watch out for this space. And finally, there are two new terminologies that I'm introducing. Of course, not mine, right? You can see the footnote out there. But I liked it for two practical reasons, right? Of course, in a funny way, one is a gas and one is a GAC, right? And let's not take it in that manner. But so far, using foundational LLMs and lot of these improvements and initiatives, use cases that you keep hearing about, has happened is based on this generative AI as a service framework, right? You take a model, it has got all endpoints exposed, you define your web applications or your application natures and boundaries around it, interact, and you get the output and you be happy with it. So it is mostly as a service, right? With a monolithic thing as a setup, and you lay down the processes to use it. But going forward, you recall what I talked about is a task-specific LLMs or small LLMs. They are going to gain a lot of popularity because they are solving very narrow problems and taking care of the risks, the identity management, the hallucination factors, the prompt engineering, defensive UX, a lot of these things built into it. And this is where you will find those things called as generative AI as a component. It will only do that. right? If you're doing it for pharma, if you're doing it for travel or hospitality or shop floor arrangement, anything that you do, but it will only focus on that and do a better job as opposed to being a very generic LLM that can many times take you in a wrong direction. So these are the two things that will take prominence as we now speak. Finally, what does it really mean from a products and the team compositions and the skills that are going to evolve around? So these are some of the initial attempt at it, which is, if you see right from business lead, you will see GenAI UX. This terminology was not there. Skill set was not there some time back. Ops engineer, but for GenAI. This is not the regular DevOps guys and CI/CD guys, as we popularly know, or even the ML engineers. This is slightly different. You will find the GenAI engineer and GenAI solution architects, because as we speak, there are probably 47 LLM models of different nature, size, and form out there, and they all claim they can solve many, many different kinds of problems. So somebody has to really understand each one of these things and make a fit gap analysis for your specific use case. You just can't walk blindly into it. So many of these newer roles are emerging as we speak, and if you guys are interested and focused in these areas, trust me, the next 4 or 5 years will be wonderful as a journey. Some of the lessons learned, I covered those things, but with the interest of time, this is where I will, leave it for you to consume. What you see here is a transition that is happening in a very, very rapid way, and we may not be realizing that. I think people can see the color patterns here. If you see the aspect of jobs and the tasks and the compositions of it, and today it is a lot of expertise, right? All of you and me, all of us saying, hey, I'm the expert in this field and then I know the best, and hence you need to really take cognizance of my expertise and then my comp and benefits and my performance, right? I'm the guy. That is slowly changing with this augmentation of LLM technologies and applications coming in. So around 2027, right, and this is a report coming through Forbes, where it is saying the human work, which is basically your relational and expertise combined together, is going to be reduced quite a lot. And you will find more and more AI, GenAI agents coming in as your buddies along with you, so that you start looking into, right, the transformations happening. Yes, it will give you ability to do more. Yes, it will actually increase your productivity and all that stuff. But look at the transact, which is what we do on a regularly basis, on a day-to-day basis. The kind of skill sets and work and the experiences we bring in, right? That is getting reduced quite a lot. So food for thought. And to plan your careers and look into what else you need to pick up on the way. But that's all I wanted to share in terms of where the groundswell moment and how it happened and where it is propelling us going forward, right? Thank you for patiently listening to me. Hope this was useful.